Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Making stupid people look stupid is satisfying, but to do it in the military without getting in trouble must be the best thing ever. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Just fix the truck. On my first enlistment in the Army, I was a mechanic. In our unit, we had 3 staff sergeants for some reason. Sergeant T was on the last year of his contract and would be retiring. He was assigned as the motor supply sergeant, a position that was made up so he could ride the pine since we were overstaffed. Sergeant G was assigned as the maintenance supervisor and oversaw the preventative maintenance and repair of the vehicles in the motor pool. The third one was our platoon sergeant and doesn't feature in the story. Every Monday, the vehicle operators would come to the motor pool to perform their weekly vehicle inspections. The mechanics would effect any repairs that were possible at the time, like changing out burnt bulbs, stuff that was easy and could get the vehicle rolling. Then we would begin performing repairs to any vehicle that had a deadline deficiency, a deficiency that needs to be repaired before the vehicle can be operated. Those don't necessarily mean the vehicle isn't operational, it's just that operating the vehicle in that condition can cause greater problems. Then we'd fix the rest. Usually on Friday, we'd order any parts that we needed to repair what was left. After the operators left on Monday, the inspection sheets were divvied up between the mechanics and we got to work. One week I had a fairly easy workload and got all of my sheets finished by Wednesday. There was only one vehicle that had a deadline deficiency left and the rest were ordering parts. The vehicle in question had been taken by the operators every day. I called the unit to let them know that the vehicle had a deadline deficiency and needed to return to the motor pool. They were short on vehicles and long on work and had been stalling, so I informed my squad leader and left it at that. I went to the office and began ordering parts. When my work was completed, I would assist other mechanics with theirs. Sergeant G walks in and asks why I was in the office, and I informed him that the rest of my work was complete and I was ordering parts. He asked to see my inspection sheets and started looking through them. I tried to explain about the one vehicle, but he cut me off and said he'd see what the paper said. He saw the deadline deficiency and ordered me out to repair that vehicle immediately. I tried to object and explain the situation, but he cut me off again and ordered me to go out and fix the vehicle. I tried a third time to explain. Again, he cuts me off and says, "I don't want your effing excuses. I want your butt out on the line fixing that effing truck. If I see you doing anything else before it's fixed, it'll be in Article 15. An Article 15 is a non-judicial punishment and can result in reduction of rank or forfeiture of pay. Roger, Sarge, I'm on it. I walked to the rack of manuals for the vehicles, pulled the appropriate one, and found the size of the bolts on the part that needed changed, grabbed my wrenches, and head out to the assigned spot for the vehicle. I laid down right there, raised my tools, and began making wrenching motions with my arms. I did this for over an hour, with some breaks, of course. Those were some giant wrenches. I saw people looking at me and pointing. Eventually, someone went to Sergeant T and told him what I was doing, and he comes over to check it out. He watches me wrenching for a minute or two, head cocked. "What are you doing, squirrel?" "Fixing this truck, Sergeant. It's got a deadline." He was looking at me real funny now, like I had heat stroke or something. "Squirrel, you do realize the truck ain't here, right?" "Sarge, I know this, and you know this, but Sergeant G doesn't want to hear my effing excuses. He wants my butt out on the line fixing this effing truck." Sergeant T told me to get up and get back to work. I told him that G had threatened in Article 15. He said he'd take care of it. I took a smoke break to give them time to resolve the issue before I went back to the office. Not sure what Sergeant T said, but G had a scowl on his face when I came back to order my parts. And our second story. Want me home right now? Sure. In my role as a team lead at an engineering company, I had 3 years of experience under my belt before a new manager stepped in. Unfortunately, this manager didn't seem to grasp the company's operations or bother to learn about our work environment. One day, a significant training session was scheduled with the client in a city located around 1,000 kilometers away. To make sure we were well prepared, my colleague and I took a flight the previous night, aiming to be at the client's office by 8 a.m. start time. On the day of the training, we arrived promptly at 8 a.m., joining representatives from other firms in the conference room. However, as the minutes ticked by, it became evident that something was amiss. 8:30 a.m. came and went, followed by 9 a.m. and then 9:30 a.m. Feeling increasingly puzzled, we decided to step out and ask reception about the delay. It wasn't until 11 a.m. that we learned the unfortunate truth. The trainer had fallen ill and the training session had been canceled. With a mix of disappointment and determination, my colleague and I swung into action. I called up the airline to rearrange our flights, while my colleague contacted the hotel. The hotel graciously allowed us to stay an extra day without any additional charges, and the airline accommodated our flight changes without penalties. In a twist of fate, we managed to salvage the situation by arranging a dinner with local colleagues and even getting some client project managers to join us. Armed with our well-devised plan, I reached out to my former boss to fill him in. He agreed with our approach, but reminded me to loop in the new manager. And here's where the story takes a turn. When we informed the new manager of our strategy, he reacted in a rather explosive manner. It seemed like he was more interested in yelling than in listening to our explanations. Despite our attempts to clarify the situation, he insisted that we return immediately, showing no willingness to understand our point of view. It was at this juncture that we decided to comply, but with a twist. We went to the hotel, checking out by 4 p.m. They charged us for another night, which we accepted with a resigned nod. At the airport, the airline informed us about the additional fee for changing our flights, which we accepted with a knowing smile. To our surprise, the airline then announced a delay due to a technical issue with the plane. Passengers who agreed to wait would receive food credits. We saw an opportunity and took it. As time wore on, our flight was further delayed, and around 11:30 p.m., I couldn't resist the urge to send an email asserting that we'd be back in the office when we were ready. Frustration mingled with a sense of amusement as I hit the send button. We finally made it home around 1:30 a.m. the next day, a journey that cost the company extra money and disrupted our local meetings, which could have salvaged the situation. The following day brought a face-to-face encounter with the new manager. He summoned me to his office and began berating me for our actions, but I stood my ground, calmly explaining our decisions and the circumstances that led to them. Slowly, his demeanor shifted from aggression to understanding as he began to grasp the bigger picture. A few months later, I decided it was time to move on from the company. During my farewell, the manager approached me and awkwardly asked if our strained relationship played a role in my decision. Without hesitation, I looked him in the eye and confirmed that it was indeed a main factor. Although it made for an uncomfortable farewell lunch, it was a satisfying moment. He may have learned something, but that's absolutely not the way for a grown man to learn it. Also, I'm not sure if he did. He probably is more worried about losing experienced people who do the work than the part where he acted like a jerk. And our next story. Fleet inspections. I used to be the foreman at a food distribution company with a fleet of about 100 units in total. Every quarter, there was a document inspection that essentially made sure that all the legal paperwork was together in case DOT ever pulled a unit over. Each technician needed to be clocked onto a repair order for each job they would work on. This made it easy to track time, to measure efficiency, but more importantly, how much time was spent on each unit in a certain time frame. If any unit had high labor times, it would go to considerations to retire it. And for our quarterly inspections, I would make a generic document inspection repair order to knock out all of them in one shot, instead of going back and forth to clock off one and clock into another. Easy, right? The company made a position called Director of Transportation, and the guy they hired had no concept of time management. We butted heads quite a bit because he liked to micromanage things that really didn't matter. I'd give examples, but it would drag this on. Anyway, he was adamant about making a repair order for everything, even sent an email demanding this be done. And after explaining the complexity of his request, he waved me off like I was a peasant. So I made a repair order for one unit, walked to the truck, checked all the paperwork, walked back, noted the work done, and closed it. I did this for every single unit on the yard. He had over 100 repair orders and over 9 hours of labor to do something that usually takes about 2 hours if you do it all at once. I was called into his office the next day. He then wanted to write me up for insubordination. I asked to have a member from HR present. When they showed up, I showed her the email chain of what he wanted. There was nothing he could do. He literally asked me to do it that way. I left the company and the techs followed to work for me at another company. We all made sure to let them know it was because of him. Not a month later, a driver reached out and told me they fired him. Wow, what a satisfying ending. It's great to see that justice prevailed and the incompetent director of transportation was finally let go. I can't imagine the frustration of having to create unnecessary repair orders for every unit. Good on you for standing up for yourself and your team. And our last story. Neighbor has trespassed and is destroying private property. So I, 25-year-old female, have lived in my house my entire life. My parents moved and gave it to me when I turned 21. Ever since I was born, we have had roses in our yard. Well, I recently got a new neighbor, 31-year-old female, and she's apparently allergic to my roses. She lives right next door and won't stop complaining about my roses. I don't want to get rid of them. I think she should have considered that I had plants when she first went to buy the house. It's not like it was the cheapest option or anything. I live in a pretty expensive neighborhood. A few days ago, I came home from work and found pieces of my rose bush on the ground. At first, I thought nothing of it, but it kept happening. I decided to get a camera in my front yard so I'd know what was going on. I came home yesterday and checked the cameras, and there she is, clear as day. You could see my neighbor, wearing some mask, chopping away at my bushes. I was obviously outraged when I saw the footage and went up to her door and threatened to call the police if I saw her do it again. She called me selfish and rude, that I should have taken the roses out because she was allergic. I'm not getting rid of my roses. It's not my fault she's allergic and chose to buy a house next to someone who grows roses. She says that she could get hurt, but I don't think it's my problem. Edit. So I called the cops last night, and I'm going to be pressing charges for trespassing and destruction of private property. I also asked her why she didn't just use some kind of anti-allergen, and she said she couldn't trust doctors with her diagnosis, whatever that means. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.